Welcome to VidZet, your home for careful consideration of our common concerns. I'm Dr. Ted Noel. Once upon a time, there was a country where civilized conversation was used to search for solutions to big problems. Nah, never happened. Today, we have louder microphones, so the shouting is louder, and a near-complete lack of ideas dominates the noise. So when we take a deep breath, all we're getting is secondhand smoke. For 2 days, we've had left and right commentators all over the news making their same tired claims. Some of them are delivered at ludicrous speed, such as, "We need to close the gun show loophole." Let's see. Did Nicholas Cruz buy his gun at a gun show? No. But why let that stop a good meme in its tracks? By the way, what is the gun show loophole? Supposedly, you can buy your gun at a gun show and skip the background check. Or you can just buy your gun over the internet. Sorry, not happening. Radical anti-gunners Michael Bloomberg, Elizabeth Warren, Elijah Cummings, and Nancy Pelosi, can you spell the usual suspects, pushed the GAO into a 2+ year undercover sting operation. They tried every trick in the book, and they weren't able to make a single online purchase without proper papers. Gun shows? Ditto. In the real world, there isn't any loophole. It only exists in the left's fevered imagination. The right trots out the psychiatry angle. These people are mentally disordered. We have to make it impossible for mentally disturbed people to buy guns. Yeah, right. How do you define mentally disturbed? Is it the guy who hears all sorts of voices no one else can hear? Wait, he's not as likely to do the bad stuff as you might think. Is the scruffy guy who waves just part of his hand at you in traffic the guy? He may be nasty, but by most definitions, he's not mentally ill. So all the arguments about mental health fall flat. We just can't define what mentally ill means. And if you can't define it, you can't write rules about it. But don't expect the left to engage in that sort of critical thinking. The next canard is, see something, say something. This time several people did report Cruz, but nothing came out of it, likely because the FBI dropped the ball. Once again, this approach failed. But does that say it always fails? Just 1 day before the Parkland shooting, a grandmother in Washington State reported her grandson to the Everett Police Department. They shut him down, saving many lives. But did that make the evening news? Of course not. The story has to bleed in order to lead. See something, say something does work some of the time. What about psyche evals? It's obvious that we simply don't know because we only hear about the failures. There are huge tables of data that suggest that kids on psych drugs are a problem. But often those simply miss the point that the affected shooters were socially disaffected. They were outcasts for one reason or another. Often they had minimal parental interaction. This crucial part of social development left them without boundaries. And without boundaries, they pushed further and further and further to find them. You see, there's a crucial need for kids to have boundaries to feel safe. But if they cannot feel safe, then they will sometimes make certain that others aren't safe either. After all, why am I the only one who has to suffer? Thomas Wickdor has shown that a common thread in this trend is a search for recognition. When you are outside looking in, you want those inside to see you. This was true in the Columbine, Aurora Theater, San Bernardino, Pulse nightclub, and Parkland shootings. It was also true in Everett, but their grandma was able to prevent the shooting. Today we've had a host of copycat threats by many more who just want attention. Some of those shootings that we talked about ended when the bad guys killed themselves, and others ended in capture of the bad guy. But each time it was a huge move by them to get attention. Disaffected kids want attention for themselves, and jihadis want it for their cause. So what can we do? There is actually a model that works. The Israelis use it. It's a military model called defense in depth. Basically, you never rely on only one layer of defense. In Israel, social media is being monitored carefully all the time. Here, we have grandma checking it out. That's the first layer, and it catches a number of threats we never hear about. But some get through that first layer. Second layer. Next, careful police work checks out threats that come from any quarter. That stops some more, even though it appears that the FBI has really gotten behind the 8 ball. We can do better. Third layer. Our next step has to consider the school. It's the softest of soft targets. Most schools are gun-free zones with multiple entrances. There was almost no way to regulate who gets in or out. In Parkland, a known bad actor with a do not allow entry order got in anyway. And he snuck out when things started to go south. We have to harden the school by limiting the number of entry points and providing armed security at those entry points. Israel does this and has had 0 school shootings since 1974. And remember that Israel doesn't just have disaffected students. It has Islamic terrorists who want to destroy them. So when the Union Grove, Texas Independent School District recognized that they had a problem, they acted. Staff are armed, and a sign warns that they will use whatever force is necessary to protect students. Indeed, this is the next layer of defense. It is well established the bad actors want their targets to be unarmed. That way they can create the greatest carnage with the lowest risk to themselves. But if they don't know who's able to shoot back, the perception of defense is enough to dissuade them. Remember that Adam Lanza drove past 2 schools before entering Sandy Hook Elementary, which he knew was a gun-free zone. The final layer of defense has to be active shooter drills. Israel does this. When the alarm is sounded, desks get turned over and doors barricaded so that a shooter will have difficulty entering a room full of kids. If he does get in, he can't see where his victims are. And finally, they are trained to rush him from every direction. He might get 1 or 2, but the rest will take him down. Remember Flight 93. We could throw in a couple more bits like smoke grenades to obscure targets, but the picture is really clear. We must protect our children. We have to place multiple layers of protection around them. Ultimately, however trite it sounds, the only fully effective way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. The more guns we have in the hands of good guys, the fewer children will die in school. We must embrace the dignity of life by allowing good guys to shoot to protect it. I'm Dr. Ted Noel. Please like VidZ on Facebook, support VidZ on Patreon, and follow VidZ on Twitter. Thanks for watching.